back for video number 2 of this little series that I'm kind of doing for basic automotive wiring. This is going to be to go over something that gets missed a lot of times by your average amateur person working on their vehicle or their power sports equipment, whatever it may be, and that is protection, serviceability, and presentability. Now, a lot of times guys will get into their project, they get something to work, and then they're just kind of happy with that and they walk away from it and leave it, but they don't think about some of the other aspects of the project that really need to be addressed. The protection part of the video, I'm not getting into wire fusing or anything like that. That's going to be something down the road that I'll get into, hopefully, here on this channel. But we're talking more protecting the wires from heat, moving parts, abrasion, stuff like that. So don't expect information on fusing in this video, but stick around. I invite you to check out the first video in the series here that kind of went over just basic electrical connections, what is and isn't acceptable in a vehicle, and kind of some techniques. So definitely check that one out. These aren't going in any sort of succession with each other, so don't worry if you haven't seen that one. It's still fine. You can watch this one. It's okay. But do go down there, click on the icon for the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you hit the notification button, it'll let you know when I put new stuff up and kind of keep you up to speed. But like I said, it doesn't have to be watched in any sort of order here. We're just kind of covering all the bases haphazardly as I see fit to record stuff. So moving on, let's talk about the protection of your wires. So there's a lot of different ways you can get your wires protected from abrasion and heat and everything else, and it can go anywhere from just wrapping up your wiring bundle in tape up to doing a full-on protection from high temperatures from exhaust manifolds and everything else like that. So we'll kind of, obviously the tape part, that's pretty self-explanatory. Take your bundle of wires, wrap it in tape. Okay, we've covered that now. Moving on to something else. Most people have seen this at your local, I mean, I've seen it at hardware stores, your farm stores, automotive parts stores, anywhere like that. And this is referred to as either convolted tubing or split loom. But most people have seen this. See if we can get it up close, if it'll focus. Like I said, it's pretty common. Most people have seen that. This comes in a variety of different sizes and lengths. Most commonly used for me, for the stuff I do, is going to be 1/4 inch, but I do quite frequently use larger sizes. I usually have it on hand here in my garage up to about a 1 inch. Like I said, it is sold in different lengths. I usually buy it in 100-foot rolls because I use quite a bit of it, but you can buy packages of it that are, you know, like 5 or 10 foot long. I always recommend getting more than you think you need because it does not go as far as you think it does. So you don't want to get halfway through your project or all the way done with the project, because I usually put that stuff on at the end. You don't want to get all the way to the end and find out that you're 3 inches short, because that looks stupid, and that affects your presentability portion. Another type of protection, this is you don't see a whole lot of guys using this, or you haven't in the past, but it's becoming more common now. And this is a expandable sleeving. And I'm not sure if this will zoom in on it, but you can see it's kind of, you can see through it, and the way, and it works kind of like a Chinese finger cuff type of thing. You can push on it and it'll expand and you slip your wires inside of it. This comes in various different sizes. This is a 1/4 inch, and I've got a roll here that's 1/2 inch and one that's 1 inch. That's one thing that you want to do when you get into your project is you want to try to, if you want to make it look presentable, is you want to use kind of what else has already been used in that vehicle. Some of your newer vehicles are going to that type of stuff, so it's kind of nice to have on hand so you can match what you're working with. The downside that I see to this, and I could be incorrect when I say this, but I don't think that it has quite the same amount of abrasion protection. So if something is rubbing up against it or anything, I don't know that it necessarily has the same amount of protection that like your split loom does. So that might be something to keep in mind, but it does hold up pretty well, this stuff. Some people have asked about gas and oil resistance and whatnot. The split loom, it resists the chemicals and everything as long as you're buying a decent quality split loom. The only issue is I mean, in most automotive wiring is resistant to it as well, but unless you wrap the whole run in tape, nothing is going to keep the chemicals out, because obviously split loom has a split all the way down it, and that other stuff, the expandable sleeving, that is obviously a webbed deal that will allow chemicals in, so that's not really sealing anything off either. It's not to seal it, it's to protect it from abrasion and whatnot. And it does give some heat protection as well. But remember, like your split loom, that's just plastic, so if it gets on something hot, it's gonna melt. So that being said, that's when you get into something like this. This is and I forget what it's called, but it's a heat resistant sleeving. It has a similar appearance to the expandable sleeving, and I don't know if that's gonna focus, but it doesn't do the expansion quite as, and it does a little bit, but not quite as well as the expanded tubing. But if you are running wiring somewhere where you can't avoid running it somewhere hot, and I'll take you over to my car that I've got here and kind of show you where I've used it, something like this sleeved over the wire, at least in the areas where it could get really hot, is something to think of. The other thing with protection is routing the wires in the first place. You want to make sure you move everything away from any sources of heat, anything that's moving, as well as putting protective coverings over it. And to keep them in that area, use something like these. Everybody's seen, let me open them up because the package is kind of trash. Everybody's seen tie wire or zip ties or whatnot. Interesting fun fact for you guys with Hondas, long before these were used to strap your plastic bumper that's fallen off on, these were used to bundle up wiring and keep it nice and pretty. So they had dual purpose now. Make sure you buy good zip ties. Don't buy the cheap, crappy ones. And typically speaking, the black wire ties, as long as you're buying a decent quality zip tie, are actually made for use in direct sunlight and around chemicals and whatnot. A lot more resistant to breaking down over time than the fancy colored ones or the cheap white ones or anything. Not to mention, black zip ties look more OEM than using weird colors. Speaking of the weird colors and Honda people, the split loom does come in different colors, so if you want to do up the whole thing in fancy colors, you can get split loom in different colors. You can actually get that expandable sleeving in different colors as well. And I can see where it would have its applications, where it would be nice to have it in different colors, other than just the import tuner scene and doing whatever you Honda guys do. On that note, when you put the wiring on, or put the wiring in and put the protection on it, don't just stop there. You need to do something that actually makes it look nice. So typically with split loom, you can just tape or wire tie at the end of it to kind of hold it in place and keep it closed. The expandable tubing is a little bit different to try and make that look good. Typically what I would do is take the wire, run it through your sleeving, and then when you get to the end, if you mess with this stuff at all, you can either take a lighter or a torch or something and kind of torch the ends of it and singe them so that it doesn't keep coming unfrayed. That's one way to do it. You can wrap tape around the end of it. But a nicer, cleaner looking way of doing it would be to actually put heat shrink around it right at the end by the terminal and shrink it up, and that'll keep that from fraying and looking like garbage later on. So that's another thing. Moving on to serviceability. When you put aftermarket accessories in anything, you want to make sure you think ahead to wherever you're installing this item, will that part ever have to come off for something else to be serviced? Working in the industry for many years, I saw a lot of people that would come in, have stuff put in, and it may or may not look nice, but then when you have to service something and take that switch panel or whatever off, they didn't think ahead to put any sort of disconnecting means in there so that you could unplug it and move it out of the way. And basically the only way then to service it is to cut all of the wiring. So make sure you're thinking about that sort of stuff. I see it a lot on ATVs and UTVs. Guys will put stuff in switch panels. A lot of times there's factory switch panels in those units, and they'll put in aftermarket switches for light bars and whatnot, and that's cool. But if you ever have to take that panel off to do any work on it and there's nothing there to disconnect it, then you're left cutting all the wiring and trying to figure that all out later. And if you weren't the one that installed it, that can be kind of a pain. This right here is just this is an OEM switch. That's all I had laying around from my CF Moto. And you'll notice it comes pre-wired, but they put a plug on the end of it so that if you need to take that panel out, you can unplug it. They do make plugs similar to this. You can get them on Amazon, or sometimes electrical suppliers will have them, but most of them don't carry that stuff. So probably an online retailer would be your easiest bet. But you can get plugs that look like a factory style plug. Take the extra time, spend the extra money, and put those disconnecting means in there so that you can actually service your stuff later. It will make your life, or your mechanic's life, a lot better. A lot of times mechanics will start charging extra if they have to start dealing with your mess. So, something to think about. As far as the presentability portion of the video, that's gonna kind of fall into place with all of your wire loom and whatnot, and routing of wires. If you cover everything up, route it with the factory wiring in a safe manner, then it's going to look nicer. I'll take you over to my car here, kind of show you what I have going on in there. I will say this is not necessarily the most presentable, but this is also kind of an ongoing project. I put a different motor in this car a couple years ago, but it's not the permanent installation, so everything is presentable, but it's not as presentable as it could be because it's all going to be removed at some point when I put a different motor with fuel injection in. So it's a little bit of a give and take with it. But I'll also show you on my side-by-side where I've done some stuff on it that is for the serviceability portion of it, so that it makes it easier, because that unit's still under warranty. If I have to anything go wrong with it and need it fixed, that sucker's going to the dealer unless it's something simple and easy. That's what a warranty is for. So I'm going to switch to the other camera, take you over there, show you that stuff. Again, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button on everything. It helps out a lot. And we'll check back with you here after we've walked through some stuff. Alright guys, this is my project car here. This is an 82 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, in case you cared. But what I kind of wanted to show you on this is a couple of applications for the different styles of wiring protection, and some notes on routing of your wiring. I did a engine swap on this a couple years ago. This is not the final iteration of it. Like I said earlier in the video, eventually I want to go with fuel injection, possibly an LS, not really sure. But I knew that going into this, so it's not 100% planned out. It was kind of a, hey, I've got this motor, I really want to do an engine swap in this car. We're going to put it in, make what we can work off the factory wiring, add what else we need as needed. So here's kind of what I was saying about going with what they use from the factory. if you look here, this wire loom right here, this is part of the factory wiring, and what they used was split loom. So everything else that I've done in here has been done using split loom. So like this wire right here, this is the temperature sensor, goes down into the head there. So it's in split loom and ran with the factory wiring back. Stays away from all of the linkage for the carburetor and everything, so it's safe there. Everything is routed just like the factory wiring was, and comes up along here, and it's all tie wrapped together nice and tight and stays away from like the wiper motor and all that, but follows all the same paths as it did from the factory. Now, like I said, this not being the complete installation on it, you can see I've got multiple wire looms in here. When I do this with whatever the final engine is, or possibly final engine, this will all be planned out a little bit better so that we can consolidate this all down into one wire loom and bring it around. Makes for a lot cleaner look. But in the meantime, it's all done with split loom like it was from the factory, and ran just like it kind of was from the factory all along the fender here. Use tie wraps to keep it bundled together so it's not just loose crap flying all over the place. I mentioned earlier about the covering that you can put on for heat resistance, and this is a similar product. I use this on my spark plug wires. These are actually made for the plug boots to protect them from the heat of your exhaust manifold, but this is basically the same type of stuff. These are actually right up against the exhaust header that I have here, plus my headers are wrapped. Not all of your wiring protection is necessarily going to go on the wiring. You can use products like this exhaust wrap to help protect and keep the heat down for the wires that are nearby. So that's something to keep in mind too. But I wanted to make absolutely sure that these weren't going to end up melting, so I used both the exhaust header wrap and this protective covering on this here as well. I said we're not going to get into fusing or anything, but part of the whole planning and whatnot that I was talking about, I do have fuses added in here, and I took the wire loom off to do some other servicing, and those aren't necessarily the type of connectors that I want to use on it. But like I said, it's safe and it's actually temporary on this one. But when this is all said and done, there'll be an accessory fuse block mounted up under the hood and everything, and we'll eliminate these fuses down here, put them into a fuse block, probably somewhere in this area up here. Kind of clean it up and make it a little bit more presentable. I don't want to get too deep into this project for you guys because that's not why we're here, but I did add electric fans on here, and that's part of what those fuses right there are for. But what I did, these actually came out of I think it was a Chrysler Sebring, and the whole shroud fits my radiator really well, so I used these fans out of a Chrysler Sebring. But when I got it out of the salvage yard, one of the things that I did, this is the factory Chrysler plug. When I took it out of the car, I actually took the wiring and cut it back further so that I could reutilize this plug. So if I ever have to take this out, I can just unplug this plug right here and this whole thing can come out. So that's part of your serviceability. You want to make it so that you can take stuff out and work on it later without any troubles or anything. You don't want to have to redo all of your wiring and whatnot. On that note, I'm going to move into my side-by-sides over in my other garage. We'll take a quick look at that, point out a few things, and then we'll come back to the bench and close this out. Alright, over here in the home garage we have my side-by-side. Those of you that have watched the channel before probably recognize this. I did a quick video on adding my turn signals down here. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I'm in the United States. These units don't come with turn signals, so they had to be added in order to ride the trails in my area here. So when I did these, they're all mounted on this plastic bumper cover. But you have to remember that if anything has to be serviced on the unit, say the winch or the radiator back behind there, that may have to come out. Now this unit, I was thinking as far as warranty purposes, because this is a new unit, but even if I wanted to work on this unit, I want to be able to take that off without having to undo all of the wiring that I've done on it. So that's part of pre-planning here. I'll get down here and show you. Get the light going here. I'm not going to take this all apart because it's not that pertinent. But if we look here, I've got my wiring ran down this structure here, and it runs up. You can kind of see there's the back side of the lights. But I've got it running to this plug right here. And this plug, it isn't the final plug that I want to put on here. I want to use a weather pack plug on there. This is like a 2-pin trailer plug filled with dielectric grease. But this allows me, if I need to take that off to service anything back here, I can just unplug these. You want to do that so that your mechanic or yourself don't have to chop the wiring and then remake all your connections and everything. If you think about it, your mechanic may not have the wiring ability or use the wiring techniques that you use, and may use substandard connections. So you don't want them getting in there, cutting it, hooking it back up, using some crappy connectors that'll end up corroding later or whatnot. So you want to put in plugs so that it's serviceable. Everything is strapped up tight, can't get caught in a wheel, it's kept away from anything hot. That's the way it should be done. In the back, for those who have watched the video on the turn signals, same kind of concept here. See if I can get this light set up so we can actually see something. This plug right here is the factory plug that CF Moto put in here specifically so you can take this bed off and get at the engine compartment to service it. All of my wiring connections I did before the plug back in this area so that this still remains for its intended purpose. Things like that, stuff that you kind of want to think about, make sure that you're not hosing yourself down the road, or your mechanic or your buddy that's going to help you with it, whatever it may be. So that's kind of what I wanted to point out on that stuff, and we'll close this out now because the video has probably gotten way too long already. So that kind of covers what I'm talking about when I talk about protection, serviceability, and presentability. Like I said, my project car, it's a project in process, so it's not perfect. So if you like the video, go ahead and hit the like button. If you have comments, make sure you throw those down in the comment section, and make sure you subscribe and hit the notification button so that you know when the next video comes out. I'd love to hear some of your comments, if you know, good, bad, or indifferent. Doesn't matter to me. Always interesting to hear other people's perspective on stuff, and if I'm doing it all wrong, let me know, because I've been doing it all wrong for a while now. So until next time, guys, thanks a lot. We'll see you then.